Hello and welcome back to another interview. This week I am joined by Big Time Val1, or also known as Big Time, who's going to be the assistant coach for Global Esports. And you are glowing today, like literally glowing, but I have to ask, how you doing? I know you're in Korea at the moment.
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you, Tom. With the time difference, it's early morning for me and late night for you. So no wonder I'm a little bit of pressure. But I'm doing very well. Korea is an amazing country. I'm very lucky to be here. I just want to enjoy all of it.
So there's going to be a few people out there who obviously I would say don't know a massive amount about you as an individual. And I would say that there's fair reason for that because your sort of rise in esports is one that I'll be honest, I'm quite surprised at. You've managed to go from basically starting out your career in what, early 2021, and now you're on like a huge organization. What was the starting point? Like how did you manage to make this journey even begin?
So it all came about, obviously, when Valorant came out, right? I hadn't really been involved in much esports before that, or much FPS titles, especially before that. But COVID hit. I was at university at the time. All the kind of sport I was doing stopped. And I wanted to find another competitive outlet, basically. So I just slowly put more and more time into Valorant. I quickly realized I could never be a player. I just don't have the aim,
We all realized that
unfortunately.
at one point.
Yeah, it's a sad day. It's a sad day when you have to make that realization. But yes, I just decided I was going to start taking it uh, more and more seriously, basically, as it came about. And I've been very fortunate to kind of, like you said, I feel like I've progressed incredibly quickly, especially by esports standards. And um, you know, I would say that doesn't happen alone. I've been very fortunate with the people that I've met, the people that I work with now, and everybody who I've worked with through my career has helped me grow in lots of ways and pushed me to the level that I'm at now.
So you sort of mentioned like it almost started as something you wanted to do in like your free time, but your was your first team Mad Lions? Because that's what it seemed like from my perspective. It was like the first team that you officially joined was Mad Lions, which is a pretty huge team to start off with.
Yeah, so not quite. It started off, I worked in like the amateur UK scene for a
Okay.
little bit and then moved across to what was the 10 Star Academy, which
Yeah.
became the Goose House.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that was like my first proper team where we were taking it very seriously. There was lots of practice. We were playing regular tournaments, and people from that team have gone on to do really really big things now. Canafis is at Unicorns of Love. Um, Keiko has just signed for Apex to play
Yeah.
in Polaris in Europe. So it was an immensely talented roster, and that was the first time where we were all putting a lot of time in, and that made me feel like, oh, I have a lot of I felt confident in my own work and I felt confident that I could push this further as a career. And then, yeah, from there, I moved on to Mad Lions, which was my first professional team.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Were you like scouted by someone who was also with the Goose House guys, or was it just you got chatting to some different people and they went, okay, we could use you?
So, what basically happened is we were unsure where the Goose House kind of project, where we were as a roster,
Mm.
essentially, and it looked like we were going to have to go our separate ways, which is always sad. Um, and I was really fortunate. I had no idea what I was going to do. Uh, I didn't know if I was going to give up at that point because I think it's very easy to just kind of get stuck in that kind of repetitive cycle of not moving up. Um, I didn't really have much income coming in at that point because it was all, it wasn't professional work. So I was at really a crossroads and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I was just super fortunate, really, that Spin reached out to me, messaged me saying that as that team moved across from 10 Star to Mad Lions, they wanted to bring in an analyst. And he said, "Oh, he'd heard of me. I'd been recommended to him by some people, which is I'm incredibly grateful for. And he wanted to see some work. So I just kind of got chatting to Spin, and he threw me a lifeline massively and made me think, okay, this is very much possible. He really liked my work. We got on really, really well as friends, and yeah, he gave me that opportunity, and I took it with both hands and didn't look back, basically.
So the next question I want to get, because even just that alone as like a starting block is pretty impressive. So if you had to give like just a small bit of advice to someone who was trying to do what you did,
Mm.
what would it be?
Um, there's lots of stuff in game and out of game as a coach and as a player that a lot of people will tell you. For me, I think the biggest piece of advice that actually helped me progress was like networking and being
Mm.
nice, being a good person and being like genuine and true to yourself. You, you want to avoid the drama and the kind of childish parts of esports that can pop up. And I feel like I've been given more opportunities in my career through just genuine conversations with people and meeting people and being friendly, um, and just getting on instead of forcing lots of in-game things. Don't get me wrong. There's lots of stuff on the server you can do to get yourself noticed, but uh, nobody's going to give you that shot if you're not a nice guy.
Are you
It's,
sure you came from the
uh,
UK scene? I feel
That's
like you've
funny.
just
That's a good one.
embodied almost the complete opposite. But I'll ignore that. And move swiftly on. So in terms of Mad Lions as a whole, for people who don't know, the roster itself, at least in the regular season, like building in towards the VRLs, was pretty impressive. Like I think you topped the regular season. I want to know what the expectations were from that organization. Like, because obviously, as said, I think when you came in as TGH, there probably wasn't huge expectations on you to really achieve massive amounts in a short amount of time. Whereas when you get to Mad Lions, I feel like it's a different ball game.
Yeah. So with Mad Lions, obviously, so they came into the season with a stacked roster,
Yeah,
but we were also walking into a very stacked region. Um, for the season that I was a part of Mad Lions, the French VRL was incredibly competitive.
yeah,
You had Vitality, you had Mandatory, lots of other big name players, and the org were very, very generous with us in terms of their expectations. Where they realized we just joined the org. They have a very unique way of doing things at Mad Lions. And they said, hey, it's going to take some time to get used to. So uh, they were very understanding of our expectations. But that's not to say that there wasn't pressure in a sense, but a lot of that was pretty much self inflicted, right? I think when we were coaching the caliber team that we had, the players were that kind of caliber of player who, yeah, I still believe they can all firmly play tier one. We set ourselves high expectations. So unfortunately, we didn't win the VRL that year. Vitality beat us in the final 3-0. They played really excellent. So we felt a little bit let down as like a roster, as a core. We felt like we could have achieved more than we did, but the organization were very happy with second, given that it was the first year we were there. And like I say, they brought in a lot of structure outside of the game. They gave us lots of stuff to implement and work with. And they said, hey, this takes some time to get used to. So they were super nice. But yeah, Mad Lions was an amazing organization to work for. Just professional through and through is how I would describe it. And that was it was a really strange contrast for me from going to the Goose House, where it was like, don't get me wrong, the Goose House guys were great to work for, but it's a huge step up
yeah. I
from
get you.
semi-pro to pro. And then it's like all of a sudden, now we have a sports psychologist with us 24/7. We have our diets are being monitored. We have to do
Oh
regular
dear.
exercise. We have a mobility stretching routine to do every day. And I was like, wow, is this what it means to be pro? I was like, this is a huge change. And Mad Lions will really showed us about how taking care of yourself outside of the game leads to better performance in the game. And just like I said, they understand that they gave us a lot to work with. So they were super supportive and very nice and happy with our result in the end.
So am I right in saying that then they kind of had the expectation that this would be a much longer term project? Because I think they were definitely an organization that were in the running for getting into partnership. So were you sort
Yeah.
of told like, okay, this is not just this year. We are going to be doing this for a much longer period.
Yeah, I think everyone was expecting to kind of stay around longer at Mad Lions
Mm.
than they did, but it's through no fault of theirs. Like you say, they applied for the franchise league, and we all had our fingers crossed, really hoping they would get in, and it just didn't go that it didn't go their way this time. So without a secure franchise spot, I think they became a little bit more unsure about Valorant, and I'm sure we'll see them back in the space again, but I can understand their hesitance. When you want the franchise spot and you don't get it, it's a difficult one. So I think I would have loved to keep working for the Mad Lions guys, especially if it was in a franchise capacity.
Yeah.
So I do really hope we see them come back because they're an amazing org who could do a lot in Valorant uh, when they decide to really commit properly to it.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Now, this next question, we are moving on to the global esports side of things. It's a similar question to the Mad Lions one, but it's more so, how on earth did you end up going from, okay, I've had a season of Mad Lions again, I think relative success in terms of how quickly things seem to progress there, but how did you end up moving to Korea and ending up on the sort of one Indian roster that existed?
Yeah, I mean, poor, who knows? So it was basically, so things kind of ended with Mad Lions, and it was somewhat unexpected in a way for me. So I was kind of left teamless, and you have to
Yeah.
go through all the LFT process. All the kind of players, everyone knows about this. Of it's a really strange time in your career when you go LFT because all of a sudden you have nothing, and you have no money coming in, and you're just messaging people all day, every day. And I'd sent out messages to almost every coach in Europe, I swear. I hadn't even really considered uh, looking out of region because it just, in my head, it seemed so mental, yeah, in lots of ways. And then I spoke to Spin. We stayed in touch even while we were kind of both LFT, and he basically said to me like, "Hey, I'm talking to Global Esports," and I was like, Global Esports, like the Indian team? Like, I was like, crazy, fair play. And he was like, yeah, they've said that they're looking for additional coaching staff. Like, do you mind if I suggest you and see if they'll give you a call? And I was like, yeah, you know what? At the time, I was in talks with like a couple of orgs, but this was the first franchise one that kind of reached out to me, and I was like, yeah, like let's just go for it. So they gave me a call. We spoke a lot on the phone. I spoke a lot with the Razor and the management. I showed them the kind of work that I do, what I can bring to a team, and luckily they decided that I was the choice. Out of everybody, and they were looking across regions. They were looking in Europe and in NA, and I'm just super fortunate that they liked my work. They got on with my style, and I'm very happy I get to keep working with Spin. He's an
Hmm.
amazing coach. So is a Razor. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. Really, like it caught me. It caught me by surprise, as I'm sure it did many people who know me when it got announced on Twitter. It's not where I expected to be, honestly. But, but I'm very happy I'm here.
So obviously for us, the viewer at home, you joined the team at the same time as all the players joined. Now I'm more curious when you were sort of actually brought on board and how much sort of you and Spin and Eraser had on sort of building this roster from the ground up, or were there maybe some pieces that were already there when you guys arrived?
So I was the last to join. Out of
Okay.
everybody that's involved now, I was the very last piece of the puzzle. So I joined when the roster was decided, like the large group of players. By that I mean was decided. Um, and then from my joining, it's been much more about narrowing down roles and map pool and all of the kind of micro stuff. I wasn't involved in picking the players per se, so it was a big topic of discussion during my kind of interviews. When I was talking a lot with Razor, I spoke to him a lot about this approach
Mm.
of signing so many people and assigning people that play duelist. He has a really really interesting outlook onto it, and I liked it. It's part of the reason why I chose this. I really do like his approach. But yeah, I wasn't a part of choosing the players necessarily,
Okay.
but I've been very much a part of helping find them roles and help them grow into their roles with this team.
What do you think of the sort of approach overall? Because obviously, from the outside, a lot of teams sort of went down one specific route, like be it like, okay, I've picked up players from Indonesia, I've gone Korea, whereas Global Esports, as the name suggests, has kind of picked up players from everywhere. Is that something that you kind of expected when you were looking for different teams? That you were like, okay, I could work with players from the entirety of Asia and from Canada as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, so as I say, I worked on the Goose House, which was pretty much all UK guys. Was
Yeah.
one guy from Portugal. Then I moved to Mad Lions, and even Mad Lions was very European, and we had Brody and Cray of like a strong English core coming from 10 Star. So I'd mostly worked with like British people my whole career. So to work in such a multicultural environment was never something that I expected. But it's been a really amazing experience. So we have Aaron coming across IGL from North America. He
Mm.
brings his own kind of North American twist on things. Eraser is a Korean coach who has a very Korean outlook on the game sometimes, and we feed that in. We have Ronsky, who's Australian, who feeds that like really niche kind of side of Valorant that we don't see a lot in. Myself and Spin bring across a lot of the European influence. It's a real mixing pot of Valorant. But I feel like the different regions and their styles can often be so different in Valorant. Since the game came out in COVID and there was no international lands for the first year, I think.
Mm.
Um, the styles really developed in isolation in lots of ways. So it's been really interesting seeing them all being brought together. And we pick and choose. We use bits of European kind of style play, lots of Asian style play. And I'm sure you guys will get to see in Brazil, but we definitely have a very interesting style, and one that I'm excited to show on the world stage.
So you kind of talked about all the different cultures that have been going through, but I want to know if you personally, obviously you've been in Korea a little bit now. Have there been any culture
Mhm.
shocks? And more importantly, did you
Oh,
try the Scorpion?
there's been so many culture shocks, so many things that I didn't even realize would be different. I haven't had Scorpion yet, but I've been trying to try as much Korean food as possible. My absolute favorite has been dalk galbi, I think it's called.
Okay.
Big chicken, like cheese mixing pot in the middle of the table. That's been amazing. And
Sounds banging.
there's so many culture shocks because this is me being in Korea now is my first time outside of Europe. So I think everything seems crazy. Uh, the one that got me the most was after a shower when they get dry, they don't have big body towels like I'm
Okay.
used to from the UK. They just use like a little square face towel, and that
More
that really
precise. Of course, that
yeah.
sounds as Korean as it could be. Everything is
I've,
precise.
I've I'm not precise with it though. That's the problem. I've been dripping wet for half the day because I can't drive. But
Oh god.
this, yes, it's such a different culture over here, but it's so amazing. It's so rich with history, so interesting, and I'm loving every second of being out here. Honestly, I'm just trying to enjoy this experience because it feels like a once in a lifetime. I don't know how many people get to go work out in Korea, so I'm just trying to soak every good recommendations of things to do in Korea or Korean food. Let me know.
Mm. Well, I can't say that I'm gonna be the most knowledgeable. I'll say if you haven't had bulgogi already, that's always gonna be the go-to. But
Mhm.
I feel like everybody, I feel like everybody would have suggested that to you. Now,
Yeah, I think so.
one of the things I really wanted to get on, because I think it's one of the major talking points with this roster, is communication. So obviously you've
Mhm.
brought players in from all over Asia. A lot of the places are already places that speak English as a core language anyway, so I don't think that would be the main problem. But has there been any issues with that so far? Like maybe someone needs to sort of polish up a little bit, or is everybody at the standard necessary to play at a competitive level?
Yes, I would say there's nothing major. The level of English does vary throughout the team because for most of them it is their second language.
Yeah.
I think the big one is texture. He hasn't played with people who aren't Korean before, so
Okay.
his English is his English isn't fluent by any means, but he's doing a lot to fix that. We have him out here with us at the bootcamp facility as much as we can, talking to the native English speakers, and his English has progressed rapidly since we've been here. I know he takes his own lessons, but it's definitely not a competitive worry, not by any means. He's very comfortable in the game. He can communicate what he needs to communicate. And it's not been a problem, really
Okay.
surprisingly. His English is far better than my Korean, that I will say. So yeah, it's so I can see why it can definitely could be an issue. But for us, we've managed to make it work. I haven't felt that communication has ever fallen through. He seems to understand everything we tell him, especially in review. And
Okay.
if there's ever anything that's kind of complex, we have a Razor who can speak both languages fluently, basically. So even if it takes slightly longer in some kind of review sessions and things, it's never going to hold us back. I don't think as a team.
Okay. Well, the other major thing is the fact that when this roster was announced, 10-man roster was the words that left the lips of whoever set out the articles. And I
Yeah.
really want to know is like that as a concept, I think, well, for me personally, coming from CS and looking at different games, it's not the greatest thing in the world from history. So I want to know from your
hmm
perspective, can something like this actually work?
I mean, I definitely think it can. So Valorant is a different game in lots of ways to CS, as we all
Yep.
know, right? And this, so sorry, this is kind of a side tangent, right? But I used to play American football for university, and one thing we would do is every week before the game, we would do opponent scouting, much like you would in Valorant, um, and then we would basically replicate. We would replicate, on the defense, we would replicate how the opponent defense played to give our offense a chance to practice against it, and then they would do the same, and vice versa. So while we're not actually running a full 10-man roster, I think the plans have changed since the original. So we're running an active 7-man roster, but
Okay.
this more than 5 kind of excessive roster idea, even 10, I think, can definitely have success long term. When we look at stuff like TSM with TSM Academy
Mm.
in North America, they would scrim each other much more than they scrimmed other people because it's a much safer space to kind of show your strats, things like that. I know oftentimes tier one teams don't like to scrim against other tier one teams just before an event, so it creates this environment of a scrim that is purely in house, which lets you be a lot more creative. It lets you show a lot more stuff,
Yep.
or it lets you even try things like stuff that aren't done as much in the pro scene, like pistol scrims is a big one that I heard about TSM doing with their academy team because they were losing lots of pistol rounds, so they would play scrims out 24 rounds of just
Oh my
pistol
god.
rounds. And yeah, like that, it sounds insane, but then their pistol win rate skyrocketed. And
Mm.
it lets you do a lot more stuff like that. It lets you have depth, which is something that's really important. Injuries in esports are unfortunately a commonplace thing. In the same way, it's a stressful job, right? You
Yeah.
never know when you're going to need to play with your substitute. And we're in a very unique position heading into this season where our depth is amazing. Like whoever isn't playing that map at any one time is certainly good enough to be in lots of ways. So uh, I, it gives me really nice peace of mind that we never have to worry about injuries. We can be incredibly flexible because now we're playing around with the agent pools of 7 people instead of just 5. I do think it can bring a lot of benefits. Don't get
You
me
do
wrong,
have
there are
4 players who
challenges.
play Jet though, so I will say.
Yes, we do. We do very much. You know what? This it's an aside, but it's really funny. Of every time there's an op in practice, all the guys are rushing to save it. Everybody wants that op, which is really funny. If they, I always do laugh if any of them ever manage to get their hands on an op in a game at any time. And it doesn't matter what agent they're on. I know that they're about to farm the opposition because they're all just so experienced on it. It does make me laugh.
So my main curiosity then, okay, you've got the 7-man roster. You head off to
hmm
Brazil. Is this going to be something that is switching throughout the entirety of the event? So like a lot of teams might have a 7-man roster, but you go, okay, we're going to run these 5 as our 5 for this event, and then maybe we work on stuff outside, or is it going to be something like, okay, we have our 7-man roster, and today you're playing for this opponent, you'll play, and you're going to directly like rotate stuff during an event?
Yeah, so all 7 players will be going to Brazil. I don't want to go too in depth on our
Give me your secrets.
actual strategy, but yeah, we want to get everybody playing
Okay.
because we feel like that's where our strength comes from. Uh, you know, with this 7-man roster, with this idea of big things, it creates lots of advantages for us, and like we said, this kind of flexibility is a big one. I also think it helps in lots of ways in review. We just have so many eyes on the problem at all times. But yeah, uh, so I don't want to go too in depth, and I think there will still be a lot of surprises for the fans in Brazil. We're trying a lot of different things right now, and we want to find the ways to get those fine margins out of this idea because it isn't something other people are doing. I can totally see why it's not without its cons, but we feel like there are plenty of pros to this, so we're going to
Mm.
try and push this as much as we can. and create those advantages for ourselves over the other teams.
Well, this is another thing I think that's going to be the most important from my perspective is environment, because
Hmm.
obviously one of the main reasons that, at least even if I think back to like 6-man rosters, Team Vitality, CSGO, one of the main reasons it flopped was because everyone wants to play every game. You want to be
Yeah.
in the server. Nobody wants to be on the sideline. So how are global esports like sort of preparing for the fact that you are going to have days where you have to sit someone down, be it like SK Rossi himself, and go, okay, you're on the sideline, but you're on the next game or something like that. Like, how are you going to create an environment where players are not frustrated by not playing?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult because it's not a done thing in esports. Like you say, everybody wants to play every map. So it's something we've had to lay down the expectations very clearly for everybody heading into this project. Uh, all of the players knew what the idea was
Yeah.
heading in. So we made sure to only sign players basically that were on board with this idea of running an excessive roster in lots of ways. And it's about how we manage the culture in that moment, like you say, where there's scrims where a guy might not be playing. So it's about how does that guy get maximum value still? How is he still a member of this team,
Yeah.
not in the scrim? Um, and it's about making them realize that if we win, we win as a group. If we lose as a group, and that's everybody. That's all the players. That's all three members of staff. That's the organization. A win is a win for all of us, and a loss is a loss for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're on or off the server at that point. You know. So it's about changing the way we frame things, the way we look at things, and the way that the player sees things. Because oftentimes, like you say, they're so used to being, you're a player, you're in the server. So we've had to kind of reframe that way of thinking of, no, you are a player for this team, and you will always, you're always a player for this team if you're in or if you're not in. So it's about making sure that they still find value for themselves and for everybody else when they're not in the server, when they're not scoring. But it's definitely different. It's different for me. It's different for everybody. Nobody's worked in this kind of system before out of any of us. So it's difficult and it has its challenges, but we're really fortunate that all the guys have taken to this really well. Um, Everybody's on board. Everybody's bringing ideas every day. So even if they're not in, they're managing to contribute significantly to what's going on, which is fantastic. This is what we want. Like we said, this is our advantage. This is our niche
Hmm.
that other teams don't have. Of we have so many more eyes than you. Like we can find
We are
every problem.
always
We can fix
watching.
every problem. It's that old saying, 10 brains are better than one, right?
That is
That's
that is what they say. I have heard that. There's also a
yeah.
saying of too many cooks, but we'll ignore that one just because it doesn't really.
That one's wrong. That one's wrong. We don't listen to that one.
Well, something that I'm sure a lot of the fans have been listening to is one of your players might have accidentally leaked a
He did.
couple of your scrims. Mistakes are made. Now, I'm not gonna go in completely oblivious and say like, oh, we've seen this player in this role, because I'm sure, as with most rosters, you test stuff, but with a 7-man roster, you probably test even more stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, we've seen a couple of players move away. Well, they have to, because as I said, you've got 4 Jet players. Uh, was that something that was planned? Because you sort of mentioned it earlier that was like a strategy of bringing in some of these maybe younger
Mm.
players and looking to shift them into new roles. Was that ever something that sort of slightly worried you a bit? Because moving 4 Jets to being, okay, now you're an Astra, now you're a KO, yada yada, it doesn't
Mm.
necessarily mean it will work.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit worrying. So, like I said, when Eraser built this team, um, what we went for was talent. What
Yeah.
we want to do is we want to build a dynasty here at Global. We're not in it for a quick win. Um, the organization has been firm on this. That it's a long-term approach. So we decided, basically, what the plan was to pick up the most talented players we could possibly find. And I think it just so happens that the best player on the roster rises up to play Jet, especially at the kind of lower down levels. So we said we want to find players where they just have that raw natural ability, that the source. I don't know how else to describe it. It's more like a feeling than anything else. But we said we want to find talent, and
Okay.
we've absolutely done that. We've brought in 7 incredibly talented players, easily. Like some of the most talented players I've ever worked with, I've ever seen on the server. And then it's about trusting ourselves, trusting the system that we'll be able to get them up to speed on this other agent and other roles. Because, like you say, it is difficult, right? You have to take a guy who's played Jet forever and put him on a supportive role. And that's not easy. It's about rechanging how they think and getting them to be more conscious of utility, more conscious of setting other people up instead of being set up. So it does bring its challenges, but I think with the caliber of player that we're bringing in, everybody's so talented and everybody is taken to other roles really naturally. Nothing that we're doing in this team feels forced. And I'm pretty sure you could speak to any of the guys, none of them feel uncomfortable about what they're doing in this team, which is perfect. That's exactly what we hoped for heading into this. And like you say, even if flexibility may seem like a problem from the outside, we also cover that by the fact that we have more players signed than you. Like
I
so.
like how you're saying "than you" as if this is
Yeah,
like
than you
By,
specifically, Tom.
by the way, DRX, we have more players than you.
Yeah, but there are no gaps
Hmm.
in our pool pretty much, and everybody has, like I said, everybody's really taken to new roles. Everybody's trying things, um, and we're very fortunate about that. Now with the scrim leaks, that's not something we're worried about. It's not an ideal situation, of course, but it happens. It's an honest mistake, but they they saw one day, or even if every opponent has watched it, uh, they've seen one day of scrims, a month or more out from an event when like you say, we're trying so much. We're making some stuff work, some stuff doesn't work, and that's what people didn't quite realize. I think oftentimes is that you're not always playing to win every scrim, even if it may seem like it from the comms because they're trying in the game. It doesn't mean that the goal of that scrim is to win. So it's not something that's phased us particularly. I think we all understand this, that it's part of a process. If other people can watch one day of a process, so be it. It doesn't bother us.
So to maybe address because obviously some of the fans will have seen their favorite player not necessarily
Yeah.
playing the agent that they sort of fell in love with. Kind of what you're saying is just because you've seen one thing, it doesn't mean that's the be all and end all.
Yeah, absolutely not. There are still plenty of surprises. Things change all the time in this system. There's been two new since that scrim. There'll be patches. There's been two new maps added. It's like Valorant is constantly evolving. And if people think that we'll be the same team in Brazil and we were on that scrim day, there's a huge disconnect, right? Things change, things evolve. We get better every day. It's one day of a very long process that we have. So like I say, it's not a worry for us at all.
So to kind of move on a little bit, I want to talk about expectations because obviously you
Mhm.
go into the Pacific League, which has teams like DRX who didn't really change anything, Paper X who didn't really change anything, Zeta as well. Like they are all established on the global stage, on an international stage. So even looking to Brazil and more importantly past Brazil, what are sort of global esports goals? Because I'd say if they're saying win Brazil, they're being a little bit unreasonable. So I imagine it probably goes a bit further than that.
Everybody's expectations are realistic. And like you say, we all understand that we're at a disadvantage. We've had to come in for the first time, and we have to create everything. Everything's fresh. But like as you say, DRX, PRX, a lot of the European teams, they've all come in with these established cores and a big foundation to already build on, right? So we have more work to do than other teams, and everybody understands that. Now, that won't change our expectations. You ask any player here and every coach, we have enough talent to go really far. We have the talent to win Brazil. We have the talent to win the Pacific
Okay.
region. So that, for me as a coach, that will always be my goal. My
Hmm.
expectations will never be lowered, but the organization are in this for the long term, like I said before, and they're very much ready for that. That they understand that it's a franchise spot that lasts for a long time, and they want to build something that's really successful in the long term. Because if they wanted to go out and just like win immediately, this isn't the method that they would choose, right? This is a long-term method for long-term growth, steady improvement, and then domination over time. That's what we're after. But as I say, that doesn't change my expectations. I don't want to go in and upset people in Brazil. I want to
Yeah.
make some people cry. I want to, give the fans something to cheer for. Like
Who in
that's what it's all
particular?
about.
Which team
Uh,
in particular do you wanna see cry?
uh, or what I would say is, uh, I love Europe. I think Europe's amazing, and I come from Europe. But now I'm away from Europe. I just want to beat them so badly. Everybody in Europe. That's who I'm gunning for.
You
But
should have kept me around.
but yeah, I mean, truthfully, yeah, we all understand that this is a long-term project. We
Mm.
all want to be here for the long term and build something that's successful over that longer period of time.
So you have a few inexperienced players, I think, to say the least, when it comes to big international events. Obviously, you have some very experienced ones as well, in the form of like Aaron. But is that something that's being taken into consideration when heading into the event? Because, as said, you've got choices of people you can go for. You've got people like Barzi, who've been on that stage a few times. Or are you looking at this as like, okay, Brazil is just one of the stepping stones for this organization, so we can use like some of the youngsters, like throw the likes of Monya in there and see what he can do on the big stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a consideration, right? How can it not be? We're fortunate enough to have Aaron and Bazzi who have competed at the very highest level
Yeah.
internationally, and that's a wonderful gift for these young players. They're managing to learn a lot from the experience that especially Aaron brings from this IGL role too. He's a real leader in and out of the game. He's somebody who's amazing to work with, and I've learned a lot already. But we feel like it doesn't really matter too much if these young guys are inexperienced. Like we chose them for their talent, we chose them for their potential, and at some point you got to dip your toes in that water, right? The we want them all to play in Brazil to kind of start snowballing, to start getting them that experience. And we'll, don't get me wrong, we'll lean on Aaron and Bazzi for their knowledge of how these things work, of that feeling of being on stage, because it's not something you can teach. But they're going to do their best, and they'll bring every bit of experience that they have to these young guys to get them ready, to get them prepared. We'll do as much preparation as we can to get them feeling comfortable and confident. But knowing the personalities that we have, like you say, we have 4 Jet players. You know how Jet players are. It's like they love it. They love that moment. They love that opportunity to shine.
They're just gonna int. That's what you're telling me.
yeah, it's like, that's it. That's the first round. Just run it down mid, our spawn to their spawn. It's just a race, actually. Um, but yeah, with the personalities we have, I know for a fact that they will all seize that opportunity of being on stage and really rise to the occasion. Given the guidance that we have here, I think everybody feels ready for it. We can't wait for Brazil.
Well, that's the thing. I'll be honest, from the few clips I've seen of Ronski, I'm very excited to see what he's going to be like if we get him on camera at all. But this is sort of, it's a bit of an off question because obviously you've got 7 players. I'm going to ask you to basically big up one, but who do you think going into Brazil is most likely to shock people? Like if there was someone you go, by the end of this event, people are going to be remembering his name, even though it could be the first time he's on a stage.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's such a tough question because everybody's immensely talented.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one I want to talk about a little bit more, I'll do it for the fans. SK Rossi.
Okay.
I've been doing lots of work with Rossi. Rossi's an amazing person and an even better player. What surprised me the most about him heading into this is his complete lack of ego about the situation. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever worked with, and he's adapting to this situation amazingly well. I think Rossi has insane growth potential. Insane, if you guys have ever seen the highlight reels and you've seen the Indian fans talk about SK Rossi. There's a reason why. Okay, like
Okay.
he's truly a fantastic player with so much room left to grow. That's what caught me by surprise, and how hungry he is to work. So I have a lot of love for Rossi, and I think Rossi's gonna prove some of the haters wrong in Brazil.
Okay, I like it. I sort of like set you up a little bit, but you definitely went with that more than I expected. So to finish, again, I'm going to put you on the spot. what is a team that you'd love to play in Brazil, and what is a team that you'd kind of like to avoid if you were able to?
Hmm. See, it's really hard with avoiding. I want to make it clear. There's nobody that we're scared of in lots of ways. There's
Hmm.
big name teams with big name players with years of experience on this top level, but it doesn't matter. We have talent here. So to say we want to avoid anybody, it, it's hard. There are lots of very very good teams who you probably don't want to play in the first round.
For me, it's
There's
Paper X every time. It's always Paper
yeah.
X. Fuck
I
playing
I have a
Paper
lot of
X.
respect. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Paper Rex. They're a team I've admired for a long time. I do say Paper Rex have an incredibly unique style, which is
Yeah.
tough to play against, as every
And you
player
know it's
knows. But
coming. That's the thing. You know that they're gonna do some shit that's really aggressive.
yeah,
It doesn't matter if you know.
absolutely. The guys from Paper Rex are all amazing. Honestly, they have
They
such a
are.
stacked roster and an amazing coach. But I want to make that team we beat. Give me Paper X
Okay.
round one. We'll take them down.
Okay.
This,
Okay.
this is the thing of like, I think big major events like this, you can't head in scared.
Okay.
Never. And with the talent that we have, with the potential that we have, we'll play anybody who's put in front of us and give them a run for their money.
If anything,
I
you want
really
to
do
avoid one of
firmly
the
believe that.
bad teams so you don't get a free win. So who would
Yeah,
that
yeah.
be?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's a dangerous question. No, there's nothing's free in esports. Nothing's free. Absolutely.
Oh god. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on, I'll be honest. I think we might have to touch base once again going into the future. Maybe
Absolutely.
maybe after Brazil, maybe once the Pacific League has started, but just before we finish, I feel like you've already said many thank yous to all the guys at Global Esports, but is there anyone else you'd just like to give a quick shout out to?
Uh, Mostly the Indian fans and the global esports fans from around the world. You guys have been amazing since I joined. I've had so many messages of encouragement, of support. I've never seen fans like it. They're honestly the most tenacious. They're just amazing fans to have. It's so nice to be in this environment where I feel like there are thousands of people out there who want me to succeed, who want us to succeed. So I want to say, you guys are amazing. Keep doing your thing. Cheer for us as loud as you can in Brazil, and we'll try and make you guys proud.
Got a hashtag GE win it because I've
Yeah,
been seeing a lot. I did
yeah,
the last video and I was like, oh,
yeah.
this is quite a
GE
nice video. I
win.
like this. And
We'll,
then
we'll do a GE fighting.
GE fighting. There
It's
you go.
everywhere. It's
Well,
everywhere.
either way, guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, we'll hopefully be back again next week, maybe with another interview.